I didn't say a word. I just looked him dead in the eye, set my coffee cup down slowly, and offered a smile I knew would keep him up for a week. This Christmas, there was no room for any X in this house. He had just made the biggest mistake of his life, and I, his wife, was about to teach him a lesson he would never forget. My name is Eleanor. I'm 42 years old, and on paper, I am the picture of the American dream. A successful real estate broker, living in a beautifully restored colonial home in Connecticut. My life revolves around schedules, closings, and making sure the seasonal decorations are always perfect. I'm the wife in this equation, the one who built this life, brick by emotional brick, alongside my husband, Mark. Mark is 45, a good man, a dedicated accountant, and usually a man who knows his boundaries. We've been married for 15 years. We have 2 kids, Olivia, 12, who is all spirit and sarcasm, and Ethan, 8, who is obsessed with anything related to space. They are the axis of my world, and my primary motivation for keeping this ship steady. My role in this family is the CEO of stability. I handle the finances, the logistics, and the emotional equilibrium. My relationship with Mark, until that coffee conversation, was comfortable, predictable, and mutually respectful, a deep partnership based on shared history. My relationship with my kids is open and loving. They know I'm their fiercest defender. The only other major player is Mark's sister, Sarah, who is my confidant, and thankfully lives 3 states away, limiting her ability to cause drama. Which brings me to the unspoken rule of our marriage: no exes. A rule Mark just decided to obliterate a week before Christmas. Beneath the polished facade of Eleanor, the successful broker, lies a deep, cold ache. My biggest fear isn't losing the house or the career. It's replacement. This sensitivity, this vulnerability stems directly from my childhood. When I was 7, my father walked out on my mother and me, not for another woman, but because he found a new life path and simply wiped us clean. The look on my mother's face, the raw, broken devastation that seemed to hollow out her eyes, is an image permanently etched into my memory. That abandonment taught me a terrible lesson. No matter how much you build, someone can just decide you are no longer essential. This backstory is the fragile bedrock of my marriage. Mark knows this not in detail, but he knows I value commitment above everything. I am incredibly sensitive to any hint of being an afterthought or second choice. When I feel emotionally threatened, my immediate instinctual reaction is to freeze, and then immediately to build a fortress. When Mark made his casual announcement, "My ex Chloe is coming to Christmas dinner with us," the world paused. My hands, which were gently holding my warm mug, instantly went rigid, the knuckles turning white as porcelain. I didn't flinch outwardly, but inside, a 7-year-old girl was screaming. My facial expression, perfectly controlled, betrayed nothing, but my eyes were doing a quick, cold assessment. Chloe, the college sweetheart, the one who got away until she didn't, was a ghost I thought Mark had properly buried. The feeling that surged through me wasn't just anger. It was the corrosive shame of potentially being second best, that awful sense of having a rival invited to my own table on my most sacred holiday. My body language became subtly defensive, my shoulders tightening almost imperceptibly as I leaned back, creating distance. Mark's careless words had ripped open an old wound, making me question every secure moment we'd shared. It made me feel small, replaceable, and dangerously underestimated. This wasn't about Chloe. It was about Mark's failure to protect me from my deepest, oldest fear, and that I knew required a decisive response. Before Mark dropped his bombshell, our house was a sanctuary of controlled chaos and festive cheer. December is always my favorite time. The air in our colonial home was thick with the scent of pine and cinnamon. Christmas music, usually Frank Sinatra, or classic carols, played softly from the built-in speakers. My daily life was structured yet comfortable. Mark and I had a morning ritual. I'd be up by 6:00 a.m., making coffee while reviewing my real estate listings. Mark would join me around 6:30 a.m., and we'd sit in the kitchen nook sharing the newspaper and talking about the kids' schedules. It was routine, yes, but it was also the quiet, mutual affirmation of our life together. Our relationship, particularly in the run-up to the holidays, was filled with small positive emotions. We were a well-oiled machine. Just last week, we spent an evening laughing hysterically as we tried and failed to assemble a complex Lego spaceship for Ethan's gift. Mark's eyes sparkled with genuine joy, and I felt that deep, comforting ease that comes from knowing your partner is truly present. I remember one typical afternoon vividly. Olivia came home stressed about a history paper. Mark, without being asked, sat down with her at the dining room table, helping her outline the essay. I watched them from the kitchen, feeling a wave of tenderness wash over me. That was Mark, supportive, stable, and truly invested in our family. Our interactions were characterized by easy touches, shared glances, and an unspoken understanding of who did what. We were partners, equals navigating parenthood and professional life with sync. The kids' presence added a layer of liveliness. Ethan would often wander into my office, hugging my leg and asking if it was snowing yet. Olivia would mock complain about having to wrap gifts, but the moment the paper and tape came out, she was fully engaged, determined to make the perfect bow. There was no tension, no underlying resentment. Our life was sweetly mundane, focused entirely on creating that perfect, cohesive family experience. We were preparing to host Mark's parents and his sister Sarah, the usual expected crew. The sheer ordinariness of our life before the bomb made the subsequent betrayal feel all the more jarring. It was a beautiful, peaceful canvas that Mark, in one reckless sentence, had decided to slash. The way Mark said it was what truly set the detonation timer. It wasn't an inquiry or an apology. It was a casual offhand statement delivered while he scrolled through his phone. "Oh, by the way, Chloe is going to be joining us for Christmas dinner this year. She's in town visiting her brother and needs a place to go." He didn't even look up. My first thought was, did I hear that right? I immediately assumed I had misunderstood the context. Perhaps she was the new Chloe, a colleague, a distant cousin. I needed confirmation, but I couldn't let my panic show. My face remained smooth, a mask of slight confusion. "Mark," I asked, my voice dangerously calm, "who exactly are you referring to?" He finally looked up, flashing that easy, oblivious grin. "Chloe, you know from college, my ex. Her brother is sick and she has nowhere else to go. It's Christmas, Eleanor. Be nice. Be nice." The word sliced through me. It wasn't just the ex, it was the dismissal of my feelings. He assumed I would simply adjust my carefully curated holiday to accommodate a former flame, validating my deepest fear of being secondary. The misunderstanding wasn't about Chloe being invited. It was about Mark's complete and utter failure to anticipate the emotional fallout this would cause me. He saw it as charity. I saw it as a profound act of disrespect to our marriage. My emotional reaction was a rapid descent from shock to cold fury. My heart started hammering a rhythm against my ribs, not of panic, but of battle readiness. My eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly as I analyzed his body language. He was relaxed, leaning back, totally unaware of the cliff he was standing on. That obliviousness fueled my anger. I forced a smile, a precise, unreadable curve of the lips. "Oh, I see. And did you perhaps run this significant change to our family holiday by me before issuing the invitation?" He shrugged, picking up his coffee. "It wasn't a big deal. She'll just be one more seat. I assumed you wouldn't make a fuss." "You assumed?" I repeated, letting the word hang in the air, weighted with judgment. My hands tightened into fists under the table, pressing my nails into my palms, a physical anchor to keep my voice steady. This wasn't a fuss. This was the boundary of our commitment being tested. I stood up the chair, scraping sharply against the hardwood floor. Mark flinched slightly. Finally, a reaction. Mark, you need to call her immediately and uninvite her, politely citing our family's existing traditions. His expression shifted from easygoing to annoyed. Eleanor, don't be ridiculous. It's too late. I already told her she could come. She's only here for a few hours. Why are you making this so difficult? He threw his hands up in exasperation. That was the breaking point. His defensiveness, his immediate positioning of me as the unreasonable party, confirmed my deepest fear. He prioritized his comfort and this connection to his past over my peace and the sanctity of our present. The ice in my veins solidified. My gaze was now an unblinking, critical stare. I didn't raise my voice. I simply said, "Fine, Mark. She can come. But understand this, you have opened a door you shouldn't have. And I promise you, I will make this the most uncomfortable Christmas dinner you have ever hosted. You made your choice. Now watch me make mine." I then turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving him alone with his phone and his colossal mistake. The game had begun. The moment I closed the kitchen door behind me, the cool professional demeanor I had maintained shattered. I walked quickly to my home office, my body moving with a jerky, adrenaline-fueled purpose. I didn't cry. Tears were for weakness. Instead, I felt a massive, powerful surge of fury, mixed with a devastating sense of clarity. This wasn't just about an ex. This was about control, respect, and the fundamental architecture of my trust in Mark. The true turning point came when I looked at the framed photo on my desk. Mark, the kids, and me, taken last summer at the beach. We were all laughing, sand between our toes. That picture, meant to symbolize our unity, suddenly felt like a lie. Mark's careless invitation wasn't just a lapse in judgment. It felt like a silent public devaluation of my position as his wife. He had no idea what was coming next. I sat down at my desk, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. My hands were shaking, but my mind was laser-focused. This rage needed an outlet, a strategy. I realized that if I confronted him emotionally, he would dismiss it as holiday stress or overreaction. I had to fight fire with ice. I had to become the CEO of this conflict, just as I was the CEO of our stable home. The emotional peak arrived swiftly. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the desk, and covered my face with my palms. For a moment, the overwhelming pain of feeling abandoned again, the 7-year-old's panic, threatened to drown me. But I took a deep, shuddering breath, and then I lifted my head. The vulnerability was gone, replaced by a cold, glittering resolve. My gaze fell on my computer screen, where my professional email inbox was open. The thought crystallized. He wants to play games. We will play games. But I choose the field, and I write the rules. I stood up again, my body straightening, feeling an incredible infusion of power. This was not about pettiness. This was about drawing a line in the sand so deep, so permanent, that Mark would never even think about crossing it again. My face, when I looked in the small reflective surface of my monitor, was tight, all softness erased. I wasn't the loving wife in that moment. I was the wronged partner, preparing for absolute defense. I walked back to the kitchen, Mark still sitting there, now looking slightly guilty and uncomfortable, a good start. My expression was now eerily calm. I walked right past him to the utility drawer. "Mark," I said, my voice perfectly level. "When exactly is Chloe arriving? I need to know for planning the seating chart." He stammered, surprised by my sudden compliance. Christmas Day, around 2, just for dinner." "Excellent," I replied, pulling out the largest, shiniest tape measure we owned. I looked at him, my eyes cold and clear. "I'm going to measure the distance between the chairs. I wouldn't want anyone feeling cramped, especially not a special guest." This wasn't about seating. It was a clear signal that I was now in operational mode. His decision had been a careless mistake. My response would be a deliberate, meticulously planned operation. The shift in my perception was complete. I was no longer the victim. I was the architect of his consequence. My promise to Mark to make this the most uncomfortable Christmas dinner he'd ever hosted was not an idle threat. It was the blueprint for my defense. My actions weren't fueled by spite alone, but by a need to reestablish the boundary Mark had recklessly trampled. My goal was justice building, creating an undeniable case that his actions had consequences, not just emotional, but logistical and financial. The first step was swift and decisive financial control. Mark and I maintain separate primary accounts, but share a joint account for household expenses, groceries and utilities, the life support account. That evening, after the kids were in bed and Mark was watching a game, I quietly transferred 80% of the working capital from the joint account into my private savings. I left just enough to cover the pre-scheduled December bills. If he can't respect my position as his partner, he won't have unfettered access to our partnership's funds. I immediately set up alerts, so any large purchase from the joint account would ping my phone. This action gave me immense tangible power, a feeling of self-protection. It was slightly harrowing, but undeniably necessary. Next, I focused on the evidence. Since Mark had framed his ex's presence as an act of charity, I decided to document his every interaction with her. The thought of setting up a camera in our home was unsettling, but my paranoia, fed by the abandonment of my past, demanded it. The next morning, I purchased a small, highly rated nanny cam online. When it arrived 2 days later, I strategically placed it in the living room, disguised as a charging station, pointed precisely at the seating area near the fireplace, where people gather for drinks. I labeled the recordings meticulously M and C interactions. Deck 25. This was my security measure, my insurance policy against any future fabrication or emotional manipulation. Then came the legal consultation. I didn't want a divorce, but I needed to know the terrain. I quietly emailed Linda Chen, a formidable family law attorney I knew from the local Rotary Club, requesting a confidential consultation regarding estate planning and complex boundary issues. During our private meeting the next day, held at a coffee shop far from my usual routes, I presented the situation neutrally. I didn't accuse Mark of infidelity. I focused on the profound lack of respect and the emotional distress it caused. Linda's advice was invaluable: document everything, secure assets, and prioritize the children's well-being. This consultation made my actions feel legitimate and strategically sound. The conversation was tense, but walking out, I felt an almost humorous relief knowing I had a professional shield. My actions were subtly visible to Mark. He noticed the joint account balance was low when he went to buy a nice bottle of wine for the holiday, forcing him to ask me for the transfer. "Having a little liquidity issue, Eleanor?" he asked, trying to sound casual. I looked at him, my eyes wide with feigned surprise. "Oh, did you not check the balance? You know how quickly things run out this time of year. I'll transfer some over, Mark, but I need a breakdown of the expenses first." My facial expression was perfectly innocent, but inside I was savoring the small, cold taste of victory. He was now operating on my terms with my permission. The cramped, controlled feeling he was experiencing was exactly the feeling I wanted him to associate with violating our trust. The foundation of his autonomy was crumbling, and he was only just starting to notice. Christmas Day arrived thick with the scent of roasted ham and tension. Mark's family, his parents and sister Sarah, were blissfully unaware of the emotional minefield they were stepping into. Then at 2:15 p.m., Chloe arrived. Chloe was exactly as I remembered, effortlessly chic, radiating that particular brand of confidence only achieved by someone who peaked in college and still clings to it. Mark's face lit up the moment he saw her, a genuine, unguarded smile that sent a spike of pure, raw pain through my chest. That smile wasn't for me. It was for a chapter I thought was closed. The first hour was a masterpiece of my passive-aggressive warfare. I seated Chloe precisely between Mark's stern traditional mother and his sister Sarah, who, bless her heart, was on my side and gave me a silent conspiratorial wink. My expression was that of a gracious yet slightly preoccupied hostess, ensuring I never made sustained eye contact with Chloe. The climax, too, occurred during the dinner service. Mark, foolishly thinking he could smooth things over, tried to engage Chloe in a lengthy, nostalgic conversation about their college days, inside jokes, shared memories of places only they knew. The children were silent, sensing the heavy atmosphere. I watched Mark's hands, gesturing enthusiastically, completely oblivious to the tightening grip of my own hands on my wine glass. My inner monologue was a screaming match. He is doing this deliberately. He is prioritizing his past and my present in front of my children. Then Mark made his move. He joked about a specific ridiculous prank they pulled, and Chloe burst out laughing, leaning slightly toward him, and then she touched his forearm, a light fleeting touch. But to me, it was a thunderbolt. My carefully constructed facade cracked. I didn't shout. I stood up, my body rigid, pushing my chair back, with a loud scraping noise that silenced the entire table. The look on my face must have been terrifying. Cold fury mixed with profound grief. "Mark," I said, my voice cutting through the silence like ice, "could you please pass the cranberry sauce? And while you're at it, perhaps you could remind our guest of the year we actually got married. Since you seem so focused on ancient history, let's ensure the timeline is clear for everyone here." Mark's face went white. His eyes darted wildly, fear, shock, and dawning realization, finally understanding the magnitude of his mistake. Chloe froze, her smile melting away. The intense, searing embarrassment he felt was exactly what I aimed for. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken accusations and the destruction of the holiday spirit. It was brutally effective. I wanted the audience to see Mark as the callous betrayer who put his wife through this, and my intense, silent suffering, captured in the rigidity of my posture and the pain in my eyes, ensured that sympathy remained squarely with me. The silence following my demand for the timeline was suffocating. Mark was paralyzed, his face a roadmap of shame and panic. His parents were staring, and Sarah was hiding a triumphant smirk behind her napkin. Chloe, sensing the shift from awkwardness to outright hostility, stammered, "Mark, maybe I should just—" "No, Chloe." I interjected, my tone still dangerously quiet. "Please stay. We're just clarifying historical dates, aren't we, Mark?" Mark finally found his voice high-pitched and defensive. "Eleanor, stop this. You're ruining Christmas. It's just a friendly dinner." "Friendly." I let out a sharp, mirthless laugh. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I didn't need to play the video I recorded. The mere threat was enough. I placed the phone on the table screen up, showing the timestamp of the recording from my charging station camera. "Mark, after you, so thoughtfully invited your ex to our sacred family holiday without consulting me, the mother of your children and your wife. I had to take steps to protect myself and my emotional boundaries. I consulted with a lawyer, Linda Chen, 2 days ago. I've secured our assets. And yes, I've been documenting your interactions, not because I expect infidelity, but because I demand respect." The mention of the lawyer, Linda Chen, was the final strike. Mark visibly deflated. Linda is a well-known, high-powered shark in our community. The implication wasn't just "I'm mad," it was "I am prepared to dismantle our life." Just then, the unexpected element happened. Sarah, Mark's sister, placed her hand gently on my arm, a silent show of solidarity, and spoke up, her voice surprisingly firm. "Mark," Sarah said, looking directly at her brother, "Eleanor is right. You weren't thinking about anyone but yourself. Chloe, I'm sorry, but this is clearly a boundary issue between my brother and his wife. You need to respect that." Sarah was my unexpected witness. Chloe, sensing the overwhelming shift in the room's alliance, stood up abruptly. Her face was flushed, not with anger, but profound embarrassment. "I am so sorry, Eleanor. I truly had no idea. Mark just said he was hosting and I was welcome. I'm leaving now. She looked at Mark, her eyes filled with a mixture of pity and accusation. You didn't tell her, did you? Mark could only shake his head, defeated. The truth was exposed. Mark had knowingly circumvented me, inviting his past into our present and making me the potential scapegoat for being difficult. The collective look of disappointment from his parents sealed his fate. My meticulously planned defense, coupled with Sarah's unexpected testimony, created a feeling of overwhelming vindication for me and a crushing humiliation for Mark. The audience, I knew, would be cheering for this moment of absolute strategic satisfaction. Chloe left swiftly, muttering hurried apologies and avoiding everyone's eyes. The door closed, and the silence that followed was heavy, but now it was a silence of resolution, not tension. The air felt colder, yet cleaner. Mark tried to follow her, but his father stopped him with a single, firm hand on his shoulder. Stay here, Mark. You have a lot to answer for. I didn't participate in the ensuing family discussion. My battle was over and I had won. I walked away from the dining table, the scene of my victory, and went into the living room where the festive lights still twinkled, but now they felt less oppressive. I sat down on the sofa, feeling a profound wave of exhaustion wash over my body. My shoulders, which had been tight knots of tension for days, finally slumped. The feeling was undeniably satisfying, a deep, visceral, a sense of sweet, complete relief and justice. Mark had learned his lesson in the most public and painful way possible. He was humiliated, held accountable by his own family, and crucially, he saw the real calculated response his carelessness provoked. However, mixed with that satisfaction was a deep underlying sadness, the realization that I had to resort to these tactics. My hands were clasped tightly in my lap as I reflected. The betrayal wasn't just the invitation. It was the revelation of how easily Mark could discard my feelings and assume my compliance. The sadness stemmed from the loss of innocence in our marriage. The unstated promise of respect had been shattered. But that sadness didn't paralyze me. Instead, it fueled the liberation. I had acted not out of petty jealousy, but out of self-preservation. I had secured my financial position and established a legal framework. For the first time, I felt I was truly living for myself, not just for the we of the marriage or the they of the kids, but for Eleanor's peace. Later that evening, after the family had left and the kids were asleep, Mark came to me. His face was etched with regret, his eyes swollen and red. He didn't offer excuses. I messed up, Eleanor. Terribly. I didn't think, and I disrespected you in the worst way. I am so sorry. I looked at him, my gaze steady. Sorry isn't enough, Mark. You invited my deepest fear to our dinner table. I spent the last week securing my boundaries. This is not over. We are starting over, but this time the rules of respect are non-negotiable. I felt the immense weight lift from my chest. I had not just won a skirmish. I had redefined the power dynamic of our marriage. I had proven that I was not the passive wife who would simply be nice. I was the partner who would fight fiercely for the integrity of our home and her own self-worth. The dominant emotion was a chilling but empowering self-respect. I deserved this. It was deserved. Now the real work of rebuilding trust could begin, but it would be built on the foundation of my unwavering strength. The weeks following Christmas were quiet, almost sterile. Mark was contrite, walking on eggshells, and I was in a phase of cold assessment. Alone late at night, I finally allowed myself to dissect my own actions, engaging in a difficult internal audit of right and wrong. The right was clear, my fierce instinct for self-protection. Mark's casual betrayal had triggered a core trauma of abandonment. And my response, securing assets, consulting an attorney, and establishing definitive boundaries, was essential. I was right to demand respect and refuse to be dismissed as the overreacting wife. My strategic, non-emotional reaction was the only way to make a man like Mark, who operates on logic and finance, truly understand the gravity of his disrespect. The justice of my actions felt sound. I taught him a lesson in accountability. However, the wrong was equally unsettling. Did I have to turn Christmas dinner into a hostile legal proceeding? Did the ends justify the means? My internal struggle was intense. My mind wrestled with the fact that I had used the children's holiday to execute a public humiliation. Their uneasy silence during the confrontation, their small, confused eyes watching the adults that was my failing. I had prioritized my personal vindication over their peaceful holiday experience. I sat by the window one afternoon watching the gray winter light. My hands were folded, resting on my chin, my face etched with deep contemplation. I realized that my actions, while strategically brilliant, were rooted in fear. I didn't just set boundaries. I built a wall with a legal moat armed with cameras. My reaction was an overcompensation driven by the trauma of my past, not just the reality of Mark's mistake. I had reacted as the 7-year-old abandoned girl, not solely as the 42-year-old successful woman. This emotional depth made me realize I hadn't truly communicated my pain before acting. I had given Mark one chance to uninvite Chloe, and when he failed, I immediately leaped to nuclear measures. Could I have been more direct, perhaps saying, "Mark, this triggers my deepest fear of replacement, and I need you to understand that before you proceed." The internal conflict was agonizing. I was proud of my strength, but ashamed of my execution. The victory felt hollow because it came at the cost of genuine emotional connection and the temporary shattering of holiday joy. My actions were justified by the betrayal, but their intensity was driven by my own unhealed wounds. This realization was both painful and necessary for moving forward. I needed to learn to fight for myself without destroying everything around me. The aftermath of the Christmas showdown wasn't reconciliation. It was reconstruction. The silence between Mark and me was a careful, deliberate space where we both had to decide if the foundation was worth saving. During this time, I engaged in profound self-reflection, leading to several critical realizations. The most painful lesson learned was the difference between setting a boundary and building a fortress. My strategic genius was also my emotional downfall. I learned that silence in the face of betrayal is not strength. It's avoidance that allows resentment to fester and compels dramatic, over-the-top reactions. My past trauma, the fear of replacement, had hijacked my adult response. I didn't trust Mark enough to handle my honest, vulnerable pain, so I reached for the cold, hard tools of legality and finance instead. The real lesson was simple. Trust the partnership enough to be honest about the pain before resorting to self-defense. I also learned that my self-worth is not tied to Mark's validation. I am inherently strong, and I don't need to humiliate him to prove it. My eyes, once filled with competitive fire, now held a deep, reflective sadness at the unnecessary damage I had inflicted. The decision was to improve the relationship, but only under radically new terms. I realized that Mark's mistake, while massive, was rooted in genuine carelessness and oblivion, not malice or intentional infidelity. He truly failed to see me. This meant the marriage was salvageable, but only if he could prove he was willing to look, and if I was willing to let down the legal shield. My ultimate goal wasn't to destroy him. It was to feel safe. I decided to put the legal actions, the camera footage, and the lawyer's consultation notes away, not discarding them, but placing them in a safe. This action was my quiet commitment to giving the marriage a second chance, provided Mark committed to intensive couples therapy. I had to choose partnership over power. My body language softened, moving from defensive rigidity to cautious openness. My fundamental error in the previous decision was a failure of communication born from deeply ingrained fear. I allowed the abandonment wound to dictate my strategy. I should have issued a firm, non-negotiable ultimatum with emotional explanation. Mark, this invitation is a fundamental betrayal of our trust and makes me feel profoundly insecure. Uninvite her or the consequences will be severe and legal. Instead, I just said, fine, she can come, which was a passive-aggressive trap. The conditions requiring change were based on our children. The look of distress on Olivia's and Ethan's faces when the dinner imploded was the non-negotiable factor. I must change my conflict resolution style for their sake. My personal integrity demands that I no longer allow trauma to turn me into a cold strategist. Mark's mandatory condition was clear. He had to fully accept the consequences, the financial control, and the humiliation as justified. And he had to actively work to understand my history and my triggers. He had to show me through consistent action that I was irreplaceable. This process wouldn't be easy, but seeing the deep sadness and willingness to fight in his eyes gave me the necessary leverage and emotional motivation to proceed with this demanding yet essential change. I was done being the victim. I was now the partner demanding true equity. If my story, the story of Eleanor, and the disastrous Christmas dinner resonates with you, the seasoned, resilient American audience, over 30, it's likely because you recognize the high stakes of commitment and the corrosive nature of careless boundary violations. We build these lives brick by brick, and it takes only one thoughtless action to introduce a crack in the foundation. Here are the core truths I learned that might protect your own sanctuary. 1. Empathy. Don't assume your partner's calm is compliance. We, especially as seasoned adults, often mistake our partner's controlled, silent reaction for acceptance. Mark did this. He assumed my composure meant I was being nice or that it wasn't a big deal. Never assume. As Mark learned the hard way, beneath the surface of the capable wife or husband lies a person with a history of hurts and fears. When your partner is too quiet, too agreeable in the face of a blatant disrespect, that is the most dangerous moment. Takeaway. Stop trying to defend your action and start asking, what about my action made you feel unsafe or disrespected? Empathy requires looking beyond the logistics of the situation and acknowledging the deeper emotional cost. If you're over 30, you know history repeats. Respect your partner's history. 2. Boundaries. They must be explicit and reinforced. My boundary, no exes at family functions, was tacitly understood but never explicitly codified, allowing Mark to rationalize its violation as charity. Boundaries, particularly in long-term marriages, decay without maintenance. You must be prepared to articulate your non-negotiables clearly and, crucially, be prepared to enforce the consequences. My action securing the finances and consulting legal counsel was a harsh reinforcement, but it was necessary because the verbal boundary had failed. Takeaway. Your most important boundary is your self-respect. Do not rely on your partner to be a mind reader. If a boundary is crossed, your response must be immediate, proportional, and measurable, whether it's temporarily separating finances or seeking counsel. This is not about being petty. It's about modeling self-worth. 3. Communication vulnerability precedes strategy. My biggest mistake was skipping vulnerability and jumping straight to strategy. I withheld my fear, my 7-year-old trauma, and moved directly to the cold, calculating defense. While my defense was successful, it was destructive. True high-value communication means having the courage to say, when you invited your ex, it made me feel disposable, and I need you to know that before I decide what I do next. Takeaway address. The pain first. The plan second. For those of us Boashterm $30, we need to learn to use our mature voice to express raw vulnerability. If you communicate your deepest fear and your partner still proceeds to violate it, then you know their disregard is willful and your strategic response is fully justified. Start with, "I feel not with you are," but be prepared to follow through if the emotional warning is ignored. The moral of my Christmas story is that you are the CEO of your own emotional security. You must audit the emotional balance sheet regularly. Never be afraid to use your professional tools, your mind, your legal knowledge, your financial acumen, to protect the personal life you've worked so hard to build. That is not controlling. That is being a responsible partner to yourself. The glow of the Christmas tree is long gone, but the clarity I found in that tense dining room remains. Mark and I are now in counseling not to fix a broken marriage, but to forge a stronger one built on explicit respect and mutual empathy rather than fragile assumptions. The legal paperwork is secured, the financial boundaries are clear, and I am committed to healing the young girl inside me who fears abandonment. What I did was harsh, yes, but it was a necessary declaration. I will not be dismissed. I will not be replaced. My value is non-negotiable, and neither is yours. If this story of navigating fear betrayal and the tough choice between love and self-preservation resonated with your own struggles and a long-term commitment, I urge you to reflect on your own boundaries. Where are you silent when you should be speaking? Where are you compromising your core self? Don't wait for your own crisis to teach you this lesson. Hit that subscribe button to join our community and hear more stories about self-worth and boundary setting in adult relationships. Share this video with someone who needs to know that their feelings matter. And in the comments below, tell me what is the one non-negotiable boundary you've had to enforce in your relationship. Stay strong, stay sharp, and always protect your peace. I'll see you in the next video.